My wife was cheating on me with my sister's husband, so I made them regret it at the baby shower. That's the truth, as ugly as it sounds. And if you'll stick with me, I'll tell you how I turned the happiest day of their lives into the moment they'd never forget, for all the wrong reasons. If you'd met me a few months ago, you probably would have envied my life. I had what people call the American dream. A decent house in a quiet neighborhood, a well-paying job in IT that let me work from home. Most days, a beautiful wife who worked in marketing and always seemed to light up a room, and a close-knit family that actually liked spending time together. Laura and I had been married for 5 years. From the outside, we looked solid. The kind of couple that hosts barbecues and sends out Christmas cards with goofy matching sweaters. And that's exactly what we did. We were that couple. Then there was my sister, Megan. She's 2 years older than me, the kind of person who remembers birthdays, brings homemade pies to gatherings, and actually enjoys those cheesy baby shower games. Megan had always been my rock, especially after our parents passed away. And Jason, her husband, well, Jason was charming in that way guys in sales have perfected. Big smile, firm handshake, always with a story to tell. He was the kind of guy who could sell you something you didn't need and make you feel good about it. We were close, the four of us. Too close, as it turned out. Weekends often meant dinners at Megan and Jason's house. They had this big place with a backyard that felt like it belonged in a magazine spread. String lights hanging over a patio, a fire pit, cozy furniture with throw pillows that matched some seasonal theme. Laura loved it there. We all did. I can still picture those nights. Jason would man the grill, flipping burgers and ribs, beer in hand, grinning like he owned the world. Megan would fuss over the side dishes, making sure the salads looked Instagram-worthy. Laura would pour wine, laugh at Jason's jokes, and lean a little too close to him when she thought no one was looking. I thought nothing of it back then. I trusted them. I trusted all of them. We even vacationed together. Once, we rented a cabin up in the mountains. Snow, hot cocoa, board games, the works. I remember thinking, this is what happiness looks like. No drama, no secrets, just family. We had traditions too. Every 4th of July, we'd set off fireworks in Jason's backyard, the kids from the neighborhood gathering to watch. Thanksgiving was always at our place. Laura made a killer pumpkin pie. And Christmas? Christmas meant matching pajamas, too many gifts under the tree, and way too much eggnog. Looking back, we must have seemed like the poster family. The kind of people you see in commercials, selling you the dream of togetherness. And maybe for a while, I believed we were that dream. I remember thinking how lucky I was, not just to have Laura, but to have a sister and brother-in-law who were like best friends. We supported each other through everything: job changes, house renovations, Megan's pregnancy journey. Megan and Jason had been trying for a baby for years. When she finally got pregnant, we all cried tears of joy. We threw them a small party with just family. Laura baked cupcakes with little pink and blue frosting swirls. Jason looked so proud, so in love with Megan as he wrapped his arms around her. And me? I just felt grateful. Grateful to be part of something so good. Grateful to have people in my life who I thought would never betray me. We were that family. The one that seemed too good to be true. And as I've since learned, we were. It happened on a Wednesday evening. Nothing special. Just one of those ordinary midweek nights where the rhythm of life lulls you into thinking everything's fine. Laura had come home a little later than usual, blaming traffic and a last-minute client call. I didn't think much of it. She kissed me on the cheek, muttered something about needing a shower, and disappeared upstairs. I stayed in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner. The sink was full of dishes because we decided to skip takeout and cook together. Or rather, I cooked while Laura scrolled on her phone, sipping wine, laughing at things she wouldn't show me. I'd chalked it up to work memes, or one of those endless group chats she was always in. As I scrubbed at a pan, I heard the soft buzz of a phone on the counter behind me. I glanced over and saw Laura's phone light up. Normally, I wouldn't have paid attention. I trusted her. I really did. But something about that moment, maybe the way she'd been distracted all night, or how she'd barely touched her food, made me look. Just for a second. And that's when I saw it. A message from Jason. Can't wait to see you again. Last night was incredible. For a heartbeat, I couldn't process what I was looking at. My brain tried to make excuses. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe Jason meant something else. Maybe. No. There was no other meaning. Not with those words. Not with the little heart emoji at the end. My hands felt numb. The warm water running over my fingers turned cold. Or maybe it was just me. I stared at that screen, hoping I'd imagined it. But the words were still there, glowing in the dim kitchen light, as real as the sick feeling rising in my gut. I turned back to the sink, staring at the suds, at the dirty dishes, at anything that wasn't that phone. I gripped the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles went white. Last night was incredible. The words echoed in my head. Loud. Mocking. Suddenly so many moments made sense in a way I didn't want them to. The time I'd come back from getting beers at one of our backyard barbecues and caught them talking in low voices, standing too close. The shared glances I'd brushed off as inside jokes. The way Jason's hand lingered a second too long on Laura's arm when he'd thank her for bringing over a dish. How had I been so blind? I thought about storming upstairs, throwing the phone in her face, demanding answers. I imagined shouting, accusing, watching the truth finally spill out. But instead, I kept washing the dishes. Because in that moment, some strange calm took over. If I confronted her now, what would I get? Lies. Tears. Excuses. Maybe she'd twist it back on me, call me paranoid, insecure. And Jason? He'd flash that salesman's smile, and tell me I misunderstood. No. If they wanted to play games, I'd play better. I dried my hands slowly, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I picked up her phone, looked at that message one last time, and set it back down exactly where she'd left it. Then I went to the living room, sat on the couch, and stared at the blank TV screen until I heard the shower shut off. When Laura came downstairs, hair damp, smelling like lavender soap, she smiled at me like nothing was wrong. She curled up next to me on the couch, resting her head on my shoulder. And I let her, because I wasn't going to give her a reason to suspect that I knew. Not yet. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. They wanted to pretend everything was fine? Then fine. For now, sleep became a stranger to me. I'd lie awake in our bed, staring at the ceiling, while Laura breathed steadily beside me, as if the weight of betrayal didn't exist on her chest. Night after night, I listened to the quiet of our room, the tick of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator downstairs. And all I could think about was that message, those words, that heart emoji. I replayed every interaction between Laura and Jason in my head like I was reviewing surveillance footage for clues I'd missed. And the worst part? There were so many. At our last family dinner, I'd watched them more carefully. I noticed how Jason's eyes lingered a little too long when Laura laughed. How she touched his arm when she passed him a dish, fingers brushing just a bit too deliberately. I saw it all now, and I hated that I hadn't seen it before. I found myself watching everything. The way Laura took extra time getting ready when we went over to Megan and Jason's house. The way Jason always seemed to have a private joke with her that didn't include the rest of us. And through it all, I smiled. I played the part of the happy husband, the supportive brother-in-law, because I wasn't ready to blow this up. Not yet. During the day, I'd sit at my desk, pretending to focus on lines of code, while my mind spiraled. My coworkers probably thought I was just deep in concentration. If only they knew. In the car, during my commute, or while running errands, I'd grip the steering wheel so tightly my fingers would ache. I'd blast music just to drown out my own thoughts. And somewhere in the middle of those sleepless nights and hollow days, a new thought took root. A dangerous one. Megan. Megan, glowing with excitement over her pregnancy. Megan, who'd cried on my shoulder years ago when she and Jason were struggling to conceive. Megan, who trusted him, who loved him. What if Jason had betrayed her too? What if the baby she carried wasn't hers and Jason's alone? I didn't want to believe it. God, I didn't. But once the thought was there, I couldn't shake it. It gnawed at me, a constant, terrible companion. That's when the plan started to form. Slowly, quietly, like a storm building on the horizon. They wanted to hide behind smiles and family dinners? Fine, but I wouldn't be the fool in their game. I wouldn't let them rewrite the story and paint me as the jealous, paranoid husband. Truth. That would be my weapon. And the truth, I decided, would be the best gift I could give. I started researching. Late at night, phone screen glowing in the dark, I scrolled through websites for DNA testing kits, paternity tests, private labs. I read reviews, looked for ones with fast turnaround times and confidential results. When I was sure I'd found the right one, I placed the order. A few days later, the kits arrived. Plain packaging, nothing that would raise suspicion. I tucked them into my desk drawer at home, heart pounding like I was hiding contraband. Now came the harder part, gathering the samples. I started noticing opportunities. A stray hair left on a pillow, Jason's toothbrush, forgotten in our guest bathroom after one of those nights when he'd had too much to drink at a barbecue and crashed on our couch. A napkin Laura had used at dinner, crumpled and left on her plate. Each item felt like a betrayal in my hands. I stored them carefully, labeled everything, kept them hidden. The whole time I kept up the act, the perfect husband, the doting brother. Because if I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. And when the time came to reveal the truth, I wanted there to be no doubt. If you've never tried to secretly collect DNA samples from people who live under your roof or see you as family, let me tell you, it's not as easy as it sounds. And it doesn't make you feel heroic. It makes you feel like the villain in your own life. Or maybe just the fool who finally woke up. The first time I stood over Laura's hairbrush, staring at the strands tangled in its bristles, I hesitated. My hand hovered there, heart pounding. This was it. Crossing the line between suspicion and proof. Between pretending everything was fine and finally facing reality. I grabbed the hairs, tucked them into a little plastic bag I'd labeled with the precision of someone who didn't want to get caught. Or maybe of someone who didn't want to admit he was doing this at all. Jason's toothbrush was easier. Too easy, actually. He'd stayed over after one of our barbecues. Another of those nights where we all drank too much, laughed too loud, and I now realized, played our parts a little too well. He'd left the toothbrush in the guest bathroom drawer, like he planned to come back for it. I slipped it into another bag, sealed it tight, and shoved it in the back of my closet. Napkins, cups, stray hairs on a jacket slung over a chair. I became hyper-aware of every trace they left behind. I moved like a ghost in my own home, gathering bits and pieces while keeping my face neutral, my voice steady. I felt like I was living in some low-budget spy movie, sneaking around for evidence of the affair. But life isn't a movie. There's no dramatic music, no cool montage. Just your own guilt, your own shaking hands, and the crushing weight of what if I'm right. When I had enough, I packed everything into a plain manila envelope. It felt heavier than it should have. Like it carried not just hair and saliva, but my last shred of hope that maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. The drive to the lab was long and quiet. It was late. The roads were mostly empty. Just me and my headlights cutting through the dark. I thought about turning around more than once. I thought about throwing the envelope out the window, pretending I never started down this path, but I didn't. I kept going, hands clenched tight on the steering wheel, heart racing with every mile. The lab was this nondescript building on the edge of town, the kind of place you wouldn't look at twice. A bored-looking guy behind the counter took my envelope, gave me a receipt, and promised results within a week. That was it. No fanfare. No sense that the world had just shifted under my feet. The waiting was the worst part. Every day felt like a year. I went through the motions, work, family dinners, pretending to be the guy I'd been before I saw that message. All the while, the weight of that envelope, now out of my hands, sat heavy in my chest. I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I'd do if the results confirmed my worst fear. And when the email finally came through, I almost couldn't open it. My finger hovered over the screen, heart pounding, breath caught in my throat. But I did, and there it was, in black and white. Jason was the father. It wasn't speculation anymore. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't me seeing things that weren't there. It was fact. I sat there for a long time, staring at the report, letting it sink in. My wife had betrayed me. My brother-in-law had betrayed my sister. And the baby we'd all been so excited about? It wasn't just a symbol of new life, it was proof of their betrayal. And somehow, that was when I felt calm for the first time in weeks. Because now I knew exactly what I had to do. The day of the baby shower arrived like a scene from a picture book. The venue Megan had chosen was one of those quaint event halls on the edge of town. White walls, high windows that let the sunlight pour in, and enough space for family and friends to gather without feeling cramped. Balloons and soft pastels floated near the ceiling, pinks and blues dancing on the currents of air from the AC. Streamers twisted along the walls. Tables were covered in crisp white cloths, topped with carefully arranged platters of finger foods. Cupcakes adorned with tiny plastic baby rattles, and pitchers of lemonade that sparkled in the light. Everywhere I looked, people were smiling, laughing, toasting to Megan and Jason's new adventure as parents. And I smiled too. I moved through the crowd, shaking hands, thanking people for coming, refilling drinks, offering plates of food. The perfect husband, the perfect brother, the perfect host. No one saw the storm brewing beneath. Megan glowed. There's no other word for it. She wore a pale yellow dress that made her look like sunshine personified, and her face was lit with joy. Jason stayed close to her, one arm always protectively around her, his smile wide, his laugh loud. He played the part of the proud father to be with award-winning ease. And Laura? She was radiant too. In that way she always was at the center of attention. She flitted from group to group, hugging guests, taking photos, offering compliments. If you'd walked in off the street, you'd have thought you'd stumbled into a scene of pure happiness. I almost admired how good we all were at pretending. But the pretending was about to end. When it was time for gifts, everyone gathered near the front of the room. The tables were piled high with boxes wrapped in cheerful paper, bags stuffed with tissue in every shade of pastel. I stepped forward, holding my gift. It was simple on the outside. A large flat box wrapped in silver paper with a white ribbon. Elegant. Understated. Laura stood beside me, her smile tight, eyes flicking to mine as if trying to read my thoughts. Jason clapped me on the back, murmuring thanks. Megan beamed, thanking everyone for making the day so special. I cleared my throat. Before you open this, I said, my voice steady, almost gentle, I just want to say how happy I am to be here today, to celebrate this new chapter for both of you. And I hope that what's inside will remind you of this day forever. Megan's eyes shimmered with emotion as she untied the ribbon, carefully peeling back the paper. Inside was a sleek wooden frame, the kind meant to hold a cherished photo, a keepsake of a beautiful memory. But instead of a picture, the frame held an envelope. Megan frowned, curious. She slid the envelope out, fingers delicate, and opened it. The room was so quiet I could hear the soft tear of the paper. She unfolded the document inside. Her eyes scanned the first few lines. I watched as confusion crossed her face. Then, shock. Jason leaned in, trying to see. His smile faltered. Laura froze, every bit of color draining from her cheeks. And then, silence. The kind of silence that swallows a room whole. Megan's hands trembled as she gripped the paper. She read it again, as if the words might change. Jason stepped closer, voice low, desperate. Megan, what is this? She whispered, her voice cracking. What the hell is this, Jason? Heads turned. Guests shifted uncomfortably. A few tried to laugh it off, assuming it was some kind of joke. But I didn't laugh. It's the truth, I said quietly, stepping forward. The truth about who's really been there for you. About who's really been honest. Megan stared at Jason, tears welling in her eyes. Tell me this isn't true. Tell me this is some mistake. Jason's mouth opened, but no words came out. His face had gone pale, his usual charm nowhere to be found. Laura choked on a sob, covering her mouth with her hand. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the reality sank in. Megan, I said softly, I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but I thought you deserved the truth. We all did. Jason finally found his voice. It didn't mean anything. It was a mistake. A mistake? Megan's voice rose, shaking with fury and heartbreak. A mistake that lasted long enough for a DNA test? That's not a mistake, Jason. That's a betrayal. Laura collapsed onto a chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Jason reached for Megan, but she stepped back, holding the paper between them like a shield. I looked around at the faces, the shock, the confusion, the pity, and I felt calm. Because I'd done what I came to do. I wanted this day to be memorable, I said quietly, my voice steady. And it will be. Just not for the reasons you thought. Then I turned, walked out of the hall, and left the wreckage behind me. I remember the sound as I walked away from that hall, muffled voices rising into shouts, the crash of something falling, the sharp edge of someone's sob breaking through the stunned silence. Outside, the late afternoon sun felt too bright, too warm, as if the world had no idea what had just happened inside those walls. I stood there for a moment on the quiet street, breathing in the crisp air, letting it fill my lungs like I hadn't breathed in weeks. I didn't look back. That night, the chaos continued. My phone vibrated endlessly. Calls, messages, voicemails. Laura, begging me to come home, to talk, to let her explain. Jason, trying to do damage control, his words frantic and disjointed. Even a few relatives, torn between shock and wanting to understand what really happened. I didn't answer. When I finally walked through my own front door, the house felt hollow. Like all the pretending, all the lies, had been stripped away, leaving behind nothing but empty space. Laura was there, waiting for me. She looked wrecked. Makeup smeared, eyes red from crying, hands wringing together like she could twist her guilt away if she just tried hard enough. Tim, please, she started, voice raw. Please, can we just... I held up a hand. I didn't want to hear it. Not the excuses, not the apologies that meant nothing now. There's nothing left to say, Laura. My voice was calm. Too calm. She broke down then, collapsing onto the couch, sobs shaking her whole body. I left her there. By the next morning, she was gone. She packed a bag, left her ring on the kitchen counter, and walked out of my life. Jason didn't last much longer in Megan's. Megan filed for divorce within the week. I heard from a cousin that Jason had moved out, staying in some cheap rental while he tried, and failed, to convince Megan to forgive him. The family gatherings, the shared holidays, the traditions we'd built together, all of it crumbled in one afternoon. Sometimes I'd catch myself standing in the kitchen, staring at that empty spot on the counter where Laura's coffee mug used to sit. Or I'd glance at the guest bathroom and think of Jason's forgotten toothbrush, long since thrown away. And I'd feel that familiar sting of loss. But mostly, I felt relief. Because the pretending was over. Because they couldn't lie anymore. Because sometimes, the best gift you can give is the truth, wrapped up in the neatest package you can find. It's been a few months now. I moved into a small rental house on the other side of town. Nothing fancy, just enough space for me and the quiet. There's a park down the street where I like to walk in the evenings, and somehow, that simple routine feels more grounding than anything I'd done in years. My life looks different now. No more shared calendars filled with family dinners and couples game nights. No more waking up next to someone who wasn't really mine. No more pretending. At first, I thought I'd feel hollow. And sure, there were moments when the silence felt too loud. When the memories crept in and reminded me of what I'd lost, or what I thought I'd had. But more than anything, I feel free. Free from the lies. Free from the weight of keeping up appearances. Free to finally breathe without wondering what I wasn't seeing. Sometimes I think back to that day at the baby shower, to the faces in that room, frozen in shock, to the sound of Megan's voice cracking as she read the truth aloud, and I can't help but smile, just a little. Probably the most expensive baby shower gift in history, I say to myself sometimes during those walks in the park, but worth every penny. There's a kind of peace in knowing that I did what I had to do, that I didn't let them keep writing their false story, casting me as the clueless fool. Megan and I still talk. She's healing in her own way, and I'm proud of how strong she's been through all of it. As for Laura and Jason, I don't know where they are now. And honestly, I don't care. Because for the first time in a long time, I'm not looking backward. Now that this chapter is closed, I can finally start writing a new one. And this time, it's mine.